Hey, welcome to our channel. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss our latest content.
I always believed I had found the love of my life, and to be honest, everyone around us thought the same. Owen and I met in college, in the hazy, golden light of a September afternoon in the campus library. He was all focused intensity, leaning over a physics textbook, and I was just trying to find a quiet corner to daydream. We were young, impossibly dreamy, and so deeply in love. The connection between us was instant, the kind you can't fake, the kind you can see just by looking at two people standing a little too close to each other, their orbits already intertwined. And it was like that from the very first meeting. We started seeing each other every day. We shared not only class notes and complaints about professors, but also plans, fears, dreams. There was this feeling, this buoyant, unshakable certainty, that together, we could build anything. Our relationship was so intense that in what felt like a blink of an eye, we decided to make it official. We chose to get married. It was a decision that seemed rushed to many. Our parents urged caution. Our friends raised their eyebrows. We were so young, but for us, for Owen and me, it felt like the most right, most natural thing in the world. It was as if nothing, and no one, could ever get in the way of that love. And indeed, at first, everything seemed perfect. We had that pure, genuine connection. The kind built on inside jokes whispered in the dark and the comforting weight of his hand in mine. It was a relationship full of complicity. We supported each other in everything. In fact, we even decided to wait until our wedding night to have our first time together, believing it would make everything even more special, a secret seal on our commitment. Owen had always been a responsible guy. Even then, from a very young age, he knew exactly what he wanted from life. While he was still studying, he was already working as a freelance web developer, his fingers flying across the keyboard late into the night. He was dedicated, hard-working, and absolutely determined to build a comfortable, beautiful life with me, and he made sure to show me that every single day. He was the kind of man any woman would dream of having. Affectionate, helpful, brilliant, polite, and above all, completely in love with me. I, on the other hand, had always been more of a free spirit, less focused on work, or a career, or any kind of long-term plan. I never had a steady job. I'd work part-time at a bookstore one semester, a coffee shop the next. My life was more focused on the personal, on social media, on hanging out with friends, on following the latest trends, while Owen spent hours on the computer, building projects, delivering assignments, and looking for ways to improve our lives. I spent hours curating my online life, searching for the perfect filter, the perfect caption, and at first, this was never a problem. On the contrary, Owen took pride in being able to take care of me, in providing a peaceful life without major worries. He loved that I was his to protect, and we were enough for each other. As long as we were together, everything else just seemed unimportant. We would spend hours talking, binge-watching series, going out to dinner, making plans for a future that felt as bright and endless as a summer sky. But plans, little by little, began to lose their space to routine. The marriage, which until then had seemed like a beautiful dream, started to be swallowed by a reality we had never stopped to think about. While Owen dove deeper and deeper into his work, trying to offer me the best of everything, I began to feel that something was missing. That initial, breathless euphoria gave way to increasingly similar days. My routine became a loop. I would wake up, do the house chores, check social media, scroll through the news, make a few online purchases, and in the end, I spent most of my time alone, just waiting for Owen to come home from the office he now rented, or to finally close his laptop in the study. I began to notice that my friends were living experiences I had never had. Trips to Europe, last-minute weekend parties, spontaneous adventures, things that I, by choice, had set aside to live this great love. And as much as I loved Owen, I truly did, I could no longer ignore that little voice in my head, a voice that, day after day, grew louder, a question that bothered me more than anything. Did I skip a phase of my life? That question began to consume me in a way I never imagined possible. I started questioning everything, all the time, wondering if I had made the right choices. I began recalling old conversations, advice from my mother I had ignored, warnings from friends I had deliberately chosen not to hear. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that while Owen kept moving forward, relentlessly pursuing his goals, I felt lost, adrift. The love that once filled every corner of my world now seemed insufficient. No matter how hard I tried to convince myself that this was just a phase, that every couple goes through moments like this, the feeling of emptiness inside me just seemed to grow, day by day. And to try to keep my mind busy, I started distracting myself with trivial things. I spent more and more time on my phone, reconnected with people from my past, looked for any excuse to leave the house, anything to feel alive, anything to do something different from the crushing monotony my routine had become. And it was exactly during one of these distractions that everything started to take a turn I couldn't have imagined, not even in my worst nightmares. Amid so many doubts and confusing thoughts, I opened Instagram. It was my go-to escape, a window into 1,000 other lives. Without even realizing what I was doing, I started looking at the profiles of people who had once been part of my life, people I hadn't seen in a long time. That's how I ended up on Sienna's profile. Sienna, an old friend from high school I had lost touch with years ago. Out of a strange, idle curiosity, I spent a long time there, scrolling through her feed. I looked at photos, watched videos, followed every post as if I wanted, in some way, to relive that time when everything seemed simpler. Sienna was different now, more confident, more self-assured. She was living a life that, in my eyes, seemed so much more interesting than the boring, predictable routine I was stuck in. I saw pictures of trips to Costa Rica, of candlelit dinners, of glamorous parties on rooftops, and it affected me deeply. Without thinking too much about it, I reacted to one of her stories with a simple heart emoji. The response came almost instantly. "Alara? Oh my God, is that you?" It was as if that reunion was something both of us had been waiting for a long time. The conversation flowed so naturally, so easily, that it felt like we had never drifted apart. We exchanged messages for hours, laughing, reminiscing about high school stories and ridiculous teachers. And in the middle of the conversation, Sienna mentioned she was starting a new relationship with a guy named Julian. She sent me a link to his profile. "You have to see him," she wrote, followed by a string of fire emojis. Julian was the typical man who drew attention. Successful, charismatic, self-assured. It only took me a glance at a couple of his photos to understand exactly what Sienna meant when she said he was amazing. He had this dark, intense gaze and a smile that felt both charming and a little dangerous. And in a way, seeing him sparked a strange mix of curiosity in me, admiration, and something else I tried desperately to ignore. A few days later, Sienna invited me for coffee, just to catch up in person, and me, thirsty for anything that could break my routine, I accepted immediately. The meeting was light, fun, full of laughter and confessions. It felt so good to talk to someone who wasn't Owen, to just be Alara again, not just Owen's wife. During the conversation, Sienna mentioned that she was hosting a barbecue at her house the following weekend, and that Julian would be there. "You should come," she said, her eyes sparkling. "It'll be fun. You have to meet him." I hesitated for a few seconds. A little voice warned me, but I silenced it. Maybe this was exactly what I needed, to see people, to get distracted, to feel alive again. "I'd love to," I replied, a smile spreading across my face, a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. When the day of the barbecue came, I got dressed up like I hadn't in a long time. I chose a red sundress that I knew complemented my skin tone, one that Owen had always loved but that had been sitting in the back of my closet for months. I spent an hour on my hair and makeup. When I looked at myself in the mirror, for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt beautiful, confident, different from that faded, tired woman I saw every day. And curiously, as if by some twist of fate, Owen wasn't working from home as usual. He had an important delivery for a client and had to spend the entire day out, attending an in-person meeting across town. This, in a way, made things even easier for me. I left the house without needing to give many explanations, simply texting him that I was meeting a friend I hadn't seen in years. "Have fun, honey, love you." His reply came instantly. A pang of guilt shot through me, but I pushed it down. When I arrived at Sienna's house, she greeted me with a tight hug, full of nostalgia. The atmosphere was light, relaxed, full of laughter and the smell of grilling food. We talked about everything, recalled old stories, made jokes. It was wonderful. And then, Julian arrived. He walked through the back gate, and it was like the energy of the whole party shifted to focus on him. He greeted me with that wide smile I'd seen in his photos, a firm gaze, a presence that just filled the entire space. We exchanged a few words at first, polite introductions, but our looks, those spoke much more than any conversation. There was an immediate, unspoken acknowledgement of something, a current of electricity that I felt down to my toes. During the barbecue, the three of us talked a lot. We laughed, we drank, we joked around. Sienna was a perfect hostess, bubbly and engaging. But there was something strange underneath it all, a tension that I felt, and at the same time, tried to pretend didn't exist. I found my eyes drifting to Julian more often than they should have. I noticed the way his shirt stretched across his shoulders, the way he laughed with his whole body. Then, at one point, Sienna's phone rang. Her expression changed. "Oh, no," she muttered, looking at the screen. "I'm so sorry, guys, it's my mom. There's a family issue that's come up. I have to go, urgently." She looked genuinely distressed. "I'll probably only be gone for a while, but please, feel free to stay, eat, drink, make yourselves at home." And with a quick, apologetic wave, she was gone. And it was there, alone with Julian, that everything changed. The background noise of the party seemed to fade away. The world shrank to just the two of us, standing by the grill on a sun-drenched patio. At first, the conversation remained light, relaxed, full of jokes. We talked about his work in finance, my long-abandoned passion for painting. It was easy, frighteningly easy, but little by little, the looks became longer, the smiles more mischievous. The words became loaded with double meanings that neither of us bothered to hide anymore. My heart was racing. It felt like a drum beating against my ribs. It was as if I were fighting against something I desperately wanted. Julian was confident, self-assured, direct, and that stirred something in me that I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. My hands trembled as I picked up my drink. My whole body seemed to burn from the inside out, and before I realized it, I was standing too close to him. He reached out and placed a hand on my arm, his thumb gently stroking my skin. "You're different from how Sienna described you," he said, his voice low. "Oh, and how did she describe me?" I asked, my own voice barely a whisper. He leaned in closer, his breath warm against my ear. "She said you were sweet. She didn't mention you were fascinating." A touch on the arm, a more intense look, a silence that said much more than any words. And then, it happened. It was like crossing an invisible line I knew existed but had been pretending not to see. He tilted my chin up with his fingers, and he kissed me. It was a kiss that started timidly, almost like a mistake, a question, but it quickly turned into something more intense, more urgent, an answer. And in that moment, everything else ceased to exist. Owen, our marriage, our responsibilities, all of it, vanished from my mind. The only thing that mattered at that moment was the pleasure, the adrenaline, the overwhelming, intoxicating feeling of being alive. When it ended, we stood there, breathless. I couldn't look at him. I turned and stared at my own reflection in the sliding glass door. A mix of guilt, fear, and at the same time, a strange, terrifying satisfaction took over me. For a few minutes, I tried to process what had just happened. But part of me, a dark and selfish part, refused to believe it had actually occurred. It felt like a scene from a movie, not my life. When Sienna returned, all apologies and flustered, acting as if nothing had happened, I tried with all my might to regain control of my emotions. We continued the barbecue, laughing, talking, discussing random things. But no matter how hard I tried, I could barely focus. My mind was racing. My whole body still seemed to respond to the minutes I had spent there, alone with Julian. On the outside, I pretended normality. I forced smiles. I agreed with conversations I wasn't really hearing. But inside, I was a whirlwind of thoughts that seemed endless. And perhaps out of fear, or maybe to escape that growing internal conflict, I decided it was time to leave. I stood up, thanked Sienna for the invitation, and hugged her sincerely. A hug that felt like a betrayal. But when I turned to Julian, I hesitated. The look we exchanged was quick, almost uncomfortable. I just nodded my head, not having the courage to even touch him. I avoided any contact, as if that could somehow erase what we had just done. I left in a hurry, breathing deeply, trying to organize the chaos in my mind. The drive back home felt longer than ever, and as soon as I got home, the first thing I did was look at my own reflection in the mirror in the hallway. I stood there for a few seconds, motionless, observing this woman who no longer seemed the same. I tried, in every way, to understand what I was feeling. If it was regret, or if, in truth, it was something else, a desire I wasn't ready to feel, but that now seemed impossible to ignore. As much as I wanted to lie to myself, the truth was clear, painful, and at the same time, exciting. Yes, I wanted more. I wanted to relive all of that. I wanted to feel that adrenaline again, that butterflies in the stomach feeling, that fire that seemed to awaken something inside me that had been asleep for a very, very long time. When Owen came home that night, exhausted after a long day of meetings, he found me strange, restless. I was avoiding his gaze. "Hey," he said, dropping his keys on the counter and coming over to kiss me. I turned my head slightly, so his lips met my cheek instead of my mouth. He paused, frowning. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, fine," I said, my tone a little too hurried. "Just tired." When he asked if I wanted to have dinner, I simply replied that I had eaten something at Sienna's that didn't sit well with me, and that I preferred to go straight to bed. I went upstairs to our bedroom almost without waiting for a response, leaving Owen alone in the living room, confused, unable to understand my cold and distant behavior. For the next few days, I tried to pretend that the mistake would be forgotten, that it hadn't changed anything, but it only took a few hours for me to realize I was lying to myself. Every buzz of my phone made my heart leap, hoping it was him, and as if the universe had decided to test my limits, Julian reached out. A message appeared on my screen. Simple, direct, almost provocative. "I can't stop thinking about Saturday," and deep down, it was exactly what I wanted. From that point on, what was supposed to be just a slip turned into a routine, an addiction. Whenever an opportunity arose, we met, in motels, on the other side of town, at his house when Sienna was at work, or anywhere we could be together, away from prying eyes. The risk, the danger, the secrecy, all of it made it even more addictive. Every time I told Owen I was going out, whether to run errands, visit a friend, or go shopping, in reality, I was going to live this parallel life. A life where I felt desired, alive, powerful, but I soon realized that to get more time, I needed a more consistent excuse, something that would justify frequent outings, odd hours, and even the fact that I had started dressing up more than usual. That's when the idea of the gym came up. A perfect plan. "Owen," I announced one evening, with feigned enthusiasm, "I've decided I need to make a change. I'm going to join a gym. I want to take care of my body, my health, my self-esteem." Of course, he supported me. He even seemed happy, thinking it would be good for me. "That's a great idea, Alara," he said, smiling that warm, genuine smile that now made my stomach clench with guilt. "I'm proud of you." Little did he know that those new gym clothes, that stronger perfume, and that more elaborate makeup weren't for working out. They were for Julian. But while I was losing myself in this dangerous game, Owen, who wasn't naive, began to notice that something was seriously wrong. I was different, distant, cold. I was always with my phone in hand, smiling at messages he didn't even know who they were from. I always had a ready excuse, and when I was home, I seemed disconnected, impatient, as if everything about him, his presence, his questions, his love, bothered me. Owen tried to get closer. He'd bring me flowers. He'd suggest date nights. "Is everything okay, Alara?" he would ask, his eyes full of sincere concern. "Do you want to talk? Is there anything I can do?" But every time he tried, he received vague, disjointed answers. I made it my problem, a problem he couldn't solve. "I'm just confused," I'd say, using words that almost seemed rehearsed. "I need to rediscover myself. Maybe I've lost myself somewhere along the way." More and more, I could see in his eyes that none of it made sense to him. Tired of the coldness, of the distance, he insisted one more time. It was a Tuesday night. He found me in the living room, scrolling on my phone. He sat down opposite me, his face serious. "Alara, we need to talk. Please, just be honest with me. Tell me what's really happening. I can't stand living in this uncertainty anymore." That's when I, looking directly at him with a hard expression I didn't recognize as my own, delivered the cruelest blow. "I need more space, Owen," I said, my voice sharp. "I feel suffocated. Your way, always wanting to know, always asking, always caring, it's killing me inside." That was a punch to the gut. I saw it land. I saw the air leave his lungs. He swallowed hard, took a deep breath, and stayed silent. On the outside, He kept his composure. He just looked at me, a deep, unreadable sadness in his eyes, and shook his head slightly. Then he stood up and went on with his life as if he had accepted it. But inside, I knew it. It was as if everything between us had just collapsed. At that moment, he understood everything. The pieces fit together in a cruel, undeniable way. The distance, the excuses, the phone, the disdain. It all made sense now, and without saying a single word about it, something inside him broke. Broke in a way that would never be repaired. Owen heard every word of that conversation. He absorbed everything, reflected, and did exactly what I asked. He gave me space, but not in the way I had imagined. There was no arguing, no yelling, no dramatic scenes. The next afternoon, I came home from a gym session to find him in our bedroom, an open suitcase on the bed. He was calmly taking his clothes from the closet and folding them. I stood in the doorway, my heart suddenly pounding with a new kind of fear. What? What are you doing? He didn't look at me. I'm doing what you asked. I'm giving you space. I tried to interrupt, my voice suddenly frantic. Owen, wait. This isn't necessary. I just wanted some time to think. I sounded lost, even to my own ears, but he was already decided. He finally turned to look at me, and his eyes were cold, empty. The warmth I had known for years was gone. For me, he said, his voice flat, this is the end. I won't insist. I won't beg. If you need space, Elara, then you'll have it. In abundance. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. When I answered, it was a lawyer. The serious, formal voice on the other end informed me that Owen had filed for divorce. At that moment, the ground beneath me disappeared. My legs went weak, my chest tightened, my breathing became heavy. I collapsed onto the sofa, the phone slipping from my hand, and broke down in uncontrollable tears. None of it made any sense to me. Divorce? Where had he gotten that idea? Why was he taking everything so seriously? With trembling hands, I picked up my phone and called him. When he answered, my voice was pure desperation. Owen, please, I sobbed. I was confused. I lost my mind. I said things without thinking. But I don't want it to end. Please, come back. Let's talk. We can fix this. But on the other end of the line, there was no longer the man who was in love with me, the man who was willing to sacrifice himself to please me. The response came cold, direct, and final. I don't want to anymore, Elara, he said. For me, it's over. There was a pause. And by the way, I've already informed the property manager that you need to vacate the house by the end of the month. The lease is in my name. After that, he hung up. He didn't even wait for a response. With no way out, no home, no ground beneath my feet, I did the only thing I could at that moment. I packed my bags, my life crammed into cardboard boxes, and moved back in with my mother. The feeling of shame, of failure, of regret, gnawed at me from the inside. And when reality finally hit, when I realized that Owen wasn't coming back, I tried to run after the only safe haven I thought I still had, Julian. I reached out to him, arranged a meeting at a quiet bar. I imagined that, at the very least, I could distract myself, ease the pain in the way I had been doing before. But this time, it was different. Instead of chemistry, fun, and adrenaline, I broke down. I started talking about Owen, about how sorry I was, how lost I felt, how I didn't know what to do with my life. I told him how afraid I was of the future, how I felt alone, empty, destroyed. I cried. And Julian, listening to all of this, just watched me. I could see the shift in his eyes. This wasn't why he was here. He didn't want to be a counselor. He didn't want to listen to complaints. He didn't want to carry this weight. He barely finished listening before he glanced at his watch. Wow, look at the time, he said, forcing a smile. I've got to go, things to take care of. And after that day, he simply disappeared. My messages went unread. My calls went to voicemail. It was as if I had never existed. The divorce went through. I signed the papers with tears in my eyes, completely and utterly shattered. Time passed. The days dragged on, and my life remained exactly where it was. Stuck. I didn't look for a job. I didn't try to reinvent myself. I didn't attempt to pick myself up. I stayed there, locked in my own world, living in my childhood bedroom at my mother's house, ruminating over every single thing I had lost. And as if life wanted to rub the consequences of my choices directly in my face, one fine day, Scrolling through social media, the very same habit that had started this whole mess, I saw the picture that made my heart drop into my stomach. It was Owen. He was holding hands with a beautiful, elegant woman. She had a bright, intelligent smile, and the caption mentioned that she was a graphic designer. They were at a tech conference together. A light, beautiful relationship, full of harmony. You could just see it. That photo felt like a knife to my heart. Without thinking, I grabbed my phone and called him. I don't even know what I was thinking. When he, surprisingly, answered, the words just tumbled out of my mouth. "I saw your picture," I said, my voice thick with unshed tears. "Owen, I want to come back. I regret everything. We can try again, start over. I understand everything now." The silence on the other end was long and heavy. Then, his response came, short and cold, but not angry, just, "Final, no, helada," and he hung up. Time kept passing. For me, everything remained the same. Living with my mother. No prospects, no motivation, no direction. Meanwhile, from the distant, painful window of social media, I watched Owen's life continue to be built. He grew, he prospered, he reinvented himself. He was traveling, winning awards for his work, smiling, genuinely smiling. And then, the final blow came. Days later, scrolling again, a masochistic ritual I couldn't seem to stop, I saw the photo that tore apart the little dignity I had left. It was a picture of the new woman's hand, a beautiful diamond ring on her finger. Owen was holding her hand, his face beaming in the background. The caption was simple, but it said it all. "Ready to start the best chapter of my life." I stared at the screen, at those words. The best chapter of my life. My chapter with him was over, discarded. He was moving forward, while I was stuck here, in the prologue of a story that would never be written. The silence in my mother's house was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own hollow breathing. And in that moment, I finally, truly understood the shape of what I had lost. It wasn't just a husband or a house. It was a future, and it was a future I had thrown away with my own two hands.